So the first thing is I would like those board members who are present to stand up. These are the folks who are donating their time. They're all volunteers, obviously unpaid, to make this council work. And I would like to give them all a nice round of applause. Thanks. Okay, we have a couple of announcements. Our annual Jam Fest is coming right up. It's for those of you who have not been to one of these things, this is a real fun event. It's going to be held this year in the street on 4th West, between 4th North and 5th North, right in front of the Mountain West Cidery. And we will have something like 30 vendors. Admission is free. We'll have it for on Saturday, the 24th of September from 11 to 11, and Sunday the 25th from 11 to 5. There'll be things for kids to do. We have a bouncy house and other activities for kids. There will be live music. There will be food trucks, and there will be vendors, if you've been before, have all kinds of arts and crafts and handmade articles for sale, and it's including some very delicious foodstuffs. We also have a jam judging. Most of you probably know that this area is called Marmalade because way back when it was largely covered with orchards, and jam and jelly was one of its major products, so that's why Jam Fest here. So we have a jam contest, and you can enter and perhaps win a prize for your delicious jam. And there will be beer and hard cider available for those of you who can prove you're over 21. Any questions about that? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I believe the next item on our agenda, is there anything else anybody else would like to announce? Okay, the next item on our agenda is Chris Wharton, who is our city council person. Hi, Chris.
Hi. Thank you. Okay, so good to see you all. Good to be here with you. In terms of what's new with the council is we've been working on finalizing the 2 bonds and have some exciting news for our neighborhood. That last time I told you that I was working on trying to secure more funding for the Wasatch Plunge or the Warm Springs Plunge building. So the mayor had recommended $6 million for that project, and I was able to get $8 million. So that'll be exciting. So this will be the biggest increase in the Wasatch Plunge building ever. And I think that $8 million will get us a lot farther in terms of definitely going to get us a new roof, definitely going to get rid of all of the black mold, and will get us pretty far in seismic stabilization for the building. So that's really, really exciting and really, really long overdue. I'm very excited about it. So there also will be some other things in the bond that will benefit our neighborhood. There is proposed that at least $1.5 million will go towards a city park in every district out of the 7 districts. The one that they've talked about most is Warm Springs Park. So not only would that would be in addition to the money for the building. So that's also really exciting. And I'm trying to think of anything else specific. Since we're talking about historic preservation tonight, we also increased the amount recommended for the Fisher Mansion, which is just over here. Yeah, so that was 1.8 million. It'll be 3 million, and that should get the building totally operable and open to have some sort of agreement between the city and whoever, maybe a state agency, maybe a nonprofit, but really exciting for historic preservation. And then it will preserve the Lodge House at Allen Park, which is the park that the city recently purchased in Scheer. So exciting. So all of this is, well, most of this is contingent. So we have the two bonds. One is a sales tax bond that the council votes on. The other is a GO bond, which the council puts on the ballot, and you, the voters, will decide whether or not you want to approve that bond. Of course, obviously, I think you should. It's the investments for both of these bonds are really targeted toward parks and public facilities. So some of the other things that would benefit from this would be the ballpark, building a new regional park at the site of the former Raging Waters. So that is a huge area that presents a lot of opportunities for the city. Some much needed upgrades to Liberty Park, Pioneer Park. So it's going to be a huge monumental investment. And the GO bond does replace bonds that the city previously bonded for that we have since paid off. So it doesn't increase the city's bonding capacity. It just replaces that, and it's a little bit less than the total amount of bonds that are retiring. But it still affects you. The reason we're able to bond is because of the property values of the homes that in our city. So that's why ultimately you, the voters, will decide that issue. The sales tax bond, the council will decide, and that's because that's not related to property. CIP. The CIP process has gone through. You remember last year we got $600,000 for traffic calming for this neighborhood. So I really focus, instead of trying to get anything in CIP this year, on trying to get the extra $2 million for Warm Springs. So there's not really, I don't think, anything too big for our district in CIP this year, but we made out abandons last year, so I'm going to take it and run with it. Any questions? All right, cool. Good to see you all.
I just want to mention to the folks online, if you have a question, please raise your hand and unmute.
Oh, yeah.
And go right ahead.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Next, we will hear from our representative from the Salt Lake Police Department, Detective Marie Stewart, who is online. Marie, would you unmute and go ahead?
Hello. I am trying to.
Marie, hang on 1 second. See if we can get you on the speaker system here. We had that working last year. Marie, try again, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
One more minute, please.
How about putting the mic by your laptop speaker?
I can do that, yeah. Last resort.
Try one more time, Marie.
Go ahead, Marie. Try again one more time. Okay, Marie, I think we're going to have to win you here. Go ahead, please.
I hope you all can hear me. I don't know how loud I am, but I don't have much to report. We're still working out the kinks with our statistical data and access to that for our liaisons. But there were 100 calls in District 3 last month. A lot of that is just random things, a lot of warrant arrests, but the problem is it's not divided up into Capitol Hill, so a lot of those are not really in. But we are working out those kinks. I think the biggest thing that I needed just to reach out to everyone is we're putting together our 5-year strategic plan, and the police department is asking for the community's help with any ideas of things you think we've done well, things you think we can do better, and so on and so forth. And all ideas are accepted and wanted, so that we can put together new strategies for the coming 5 years. So if anyone has anything, please reach out to me through email, and I'll forward all of your ideas up the chain. And that's about it for me today. Does anyone have any questions?
Are there any questions for Detective Stewart? Anyone online like to raise their hand if there's a question?
David, could you summarize what she said? I can barely hear it.
Okay. What Detective Stewart said was that the police department is initiating a planning process, and they are soliciting suggestions of any kind from anybody, and that if we send them to her, she will forward them up the chain and make sure that they are heard. Okay, I don't see any questions. Thank you very much, Detective Stewart. Okay, next on the schedule we have Hannah Barton, who is the mayor's office representative for our district. Hannah, I'm sorry, our audio here is not working as well as we hoped, but I will try to make it clear for people here.
No, that's okay, no problem. I will try to be loud. Can you guys hear me right now?
Can we try it one more time?
Hang on, we're going to try one more thing.
Try now.
Okay, try now.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you all for having me today, and I'm sorry that I'm there remotely. I have 2 community council meetings tonight, and so I'm attending one in person, but stepped out because I still wanted to make sure I gave you all an update. I will definitely be there in person for the September meeting. I wanted to let you all know that our community outreach team has started a new outreach strategy, and that's called Community Office Hours. So we all of us liaisons are posted at these different community hubs throughout each city council district, and we're going to be doing that once a month as an attempt to with people that we haven't had relationships with in the past, or maybe folks who aren't able to attend their community council meetings because of different work schedules or childcare responsibilities. So I actually will be in District 3 tomorrow at the Marmalade Library, where you are all at right now. And I'll be there from noon to 2 p.m. And that's, of course, a chance to engage with all of you lovely folks if anyone wants to come visit and chat with me during that time. But as I said before, that's also the hope there is that we'll engage with new members of your community, maybe people who just moved in, maybe folks who aren't aware of the great work that you all do as a community council. And that way I can engage with them, get them connected with the mayor's office, but then also hopefully point them your way so that they will potentially start attending your meetings and getting involved in their own community council. So that's something that I will be doing monthly throughout District 3. If any of you have any suggestions or certain spots you want me to go to, we're doing businesses, different community spaces, even public parks. So as it starts to cool down in the fall, I definitely want to get to some public parks in District 3. And I'll just, set up a little booth and be there for people to come talk to me and ask questions about the city and things that the mayor is working on. So that is an exciting new venture for the fall. I also wanted to talk just a little bit about the Livable Streets program. This is a program that was started decades ago, but there hasn't been a Livable Streets project done in the past 19 years. And so this new initiative just started up this week at the city, where we're looking at immediate projects that can be done to make our streets safer, more walkable for our communities. And I know that that's particularly an issue in the Capitol Hill area, as you see a lot of speeding cars in the area. So the program is looking at 19 different traffic calming treatments for lots of different areas in the city. There were actually 403 miles of roadway identified for possible improvements. And those areas, that information was based on crash data, speed data, and proximity to important community spaces like schools and parks. And so there will be 19 different treatments for a lot of those areas. Things like speed bumps, raised crosswalks, speed feedback signs, so that like the radar signs that tell you how fast you're going, roundabouts, things like that. Obviously, some of those are relatively small projects that can be hopefully started on this fall. Some of those are larger projects that would require funding and would be looking at 2023 and 2024. But that's something that the mayor is really prioritizing, as we've seen an increase in pedestrian deaths in this year, hoping to make our communities safer for walkers, bikers, and even drivers. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of us still use personal vehicles and want to be safe in our own city. So that's some hopefully exciting projects coming out of that. And that goes hand in hand with the mayor's Safe Streets Task Force, as they're looking at these kind of hot spots throughout the city where we've seen a lot of the crashes this year, and where we consistently see fatalities or injuries or things like that, and what we can do to improve those hot spots to make the whole city safer. That is all the updates that I have today, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, are there any questions for Hannah? Again, people online, just please unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay, thank you very much, Hannah.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you all next month.
Okay. Next on our program is Kathleen Kennedy, who's our representative on the Salt Lake City School District. I don't see her either here or online.
She did not RSVP, and she has already moved to Boston.
Okay. So,
she is still our rep, so I will continue to offer her Zoom links.
okay, if you didn't hear that, I'm told that Kathleen has moved already to pursue her education, but she still is our representative, and we will be distributing any information that she gives us. Okay, next we're going to have Brian Hutchinson, who is the chair of our Transportation Committee, give us an update on the Capitol Hill Traffic Calming Plan, which was funded, as you just heard Chris refer to, by our Capital Improvement Project funding last year. So Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm gonna turn this off.
Many times. There's an echo. Oh, there you are. I saw you online here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as Hannah actually so Hannah referred to the Livable Streets program, and Capitol Hill Neighborhood Council is with the heavy lift by Councilmember Wharton is actually project number 1 for the Livable Streets program. And last year we were awarded $600,000 for this project, and it's going to be neighborhood-wide, wall-to-wall slowing down of vehicles through engineering. And at this point, we've been working collaboratively with the city, with all agencies, UHP, Salt Lake PD, Fire Department, West High, Washington Elementary, Marmalade Library, and residents throughout the neighborhood had 3 petitions with over 500 signatures supporting traffic calming over the last, since 2018, and since 2019 we've had 2, and one we just finished a month and a half ago, Capitol Neighborhood Council, just to go back, verify support, and also solicit input on the types of features and just the basic scheme, and feedback on that. A few days ago, Council Chair Dave Scheer and Councilmember Wharton and I met with the Salt Lake Transportation Committee Salt Lake Transportation Division Director and Project Engineer, John Larson, the Director, Project Engineer, Kyle Cook, at a feature on 11th Ave, which had some similarities to the design for a feature in Ensign Downs area, and we actually measured it, got down on the ground, and recorded the stations and the offsets, so we have a good handle on that feature. And there are several others that Dr. Reed Ewing from the University of Utah is working with us on to actually finesse this concept. I'm just dragging through here. What we do have is Kyle Cook, is a project engineer, is now fully committed to this project. As residents of Salt Lake City have witnessed, there's a massive project on 2nd South, and Kyle's heading that project, still is heading that, but he's also now allowed a little bit of free time to dedicate to our project. So we're finalizing designs and in the process right now of transferring the capital traffic calming plan model to a GIS format that the Salt Lake Transportation Division uses, so they can interface with engineering and to track projects. And so that's the stage they're at right now. By somewhere in the fall, we were hoping at the beginning of the fall, but probably by the end of the fall, they'll have a bid package together that they can hand off to engineering so that they can develop templates and line up contractors to execute implement the plan at the beginning of 2023, or construction season 2023, which is, well, it's getting longer every year, it's getting earlier every year, and so it's probably going to be March-ish where they're going to start implementing vertical speed suppression devices and other elements. As we all have seen, we now have a 20-mile-an-hour default maximum speed citywide. Although I did see a 25-mile-an-hour speed board in the avenues, so maybe Chris and the Salt Lake PD can coordinate with the city on that. They should have said 20 is your target speed. They said 25. I noticed when my wife and I are walking over there in the city. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Glenn.
Just to clarify, that 20-mile-an-hour speed limit has been enacted, so they're enforcing on it now?
Yes, Glenn asked if. Repeat the question. Yes, and so Glenn, who's a board member, was clarifying on whether the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is enacted, and yes, it's enforced now, and is being enforced to some degree. But there's signage. Chris, maybe confirm, has the signage shift been completed throughout the city, or there's still some neighborhoods like near Jeff's house? They're still in the house and a few places.
Yeah. Well, so.
Chris Ward.
I also got a message online that people online can't hear the microphone very well, so please hold
Okay.
it close.
So not every 25 turned into a 20. So some of those might still just have remained at 25, depending on the designation, or like if it's a state road, like they're not doing the 20 as plenty. So it depends on where the location is. But my understanding was, I went out and hung some signs, and that they were going to be finishing up District 3 that day, and that was last week. So they should mostly be replaced by now.
Yeah, I noticed A Street is where I saw that speed board, and it said you should be going 25, which is oops. They got to reconcile that. I Street is still 25. Yes.
I think Unit streets and collector streets are still 25.
Yeah, so there's different categories of streets, and those, Paul said, you know, collector streets, arterials are 25. Now, state roads, UDOT likes 30, but they have actually on 300 West, they have a 30-mile-an-hour zone from North Temple to 5th South. We're working, the city's still planning to shift to 30 from 5th South down to 21st South. We're also working with UDOT to change it right here, and this is something that's very dear to our hearts and to the manager of the library here, that we have we have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in our neighborhood. You know, from North Temple, continue all the way up to 10th North. Any other questions?
Yeah. I have to use the microphone so people online can hear me. Somebody online about racing and modified off-roads on Main Street and State Street.
Still, believe it or not. Was that your question? Yeah, so leave your race car at home. Yeah, the question is really referring to enforcement. And I would defer to, UHP has actually done as much enforcement as Salt Lake PD on 300 West and 600 North, and we really appreciate that. UHP has been a good name, and they, as you know, they have an office up at the Capitol building. And we need to get more coordination on that, because what good is a law if it's not? This brings us right back to the 3 E's. We have to educate people on why we need to go the speed limit, why we lowered the speed limit to 20. And by the way, the mortality rate at 20 is half that of the mortality. So that should be enough for everybody to just go 20 max. What was the other question?
I think so.
Yeah, in the back.
Oh, wait,
Yeah, Brian, so-
wait. We really need to use the microphone for folks online. Would you mind coming down here, Jake?
Jake is a
Normally
board
we have a
member.
roving
He knows
microphone,
better,
but I don't know what happens.
Thanks, Jake.
Well, it's on the same topic. Everywhere I've lived, I've gotten a speeding ticket, and that's like 6 different places I've lived outside of Utah, and I've never gotten a traffic ticket or anything in Utah, and I very rarely see people getting pulled over in Utah. So about the enforcement issue, what good is I mean, everyone knows a speed limit sign does nothing to actually reduce speed. So is there a plan, any aspect of the traffic calming plan, or what the city or state is doing to increase enforcement?
This might be a very good time to introduce some folks from the Utah Highway Patrol who are here tonight. Introduce yourself, Lieutenant.
Good evening, folks. My name is Lieutenant George Hansen. I actually just recently took over the Capitol Complex as the section commander up there. I also have Captain Greg Hawley is with me tonight. We appreciate you allowing us to come down and being a part of the neighborhood council here. I was able to have a productive meeting with Glenn on the Hill about a month ago or so, and concerns that take place around the Capitol on the roads and in the neighborhoods with the speeding vehicles, the loud mufflers, the racing that takes place around the surface streets of the Capitol. And I understand that the streets are Salt Lake City PD's responsibility, but we have a presence there on the Capitol as well. And we have an opportunity to affect what goes on around the Capitol complex, and whether that's enforcement, whether it's just a greater visibility, things like that. So I understand the pleas of helping out with what's going on with the traffic issues up there. I can report, after meeting with Glenn this last month, I've worked with our sergeant who runs our motor squad, which is the motorcycle detachment for the Highway Patrol. And I've scheduled an evening. It's either going to be, I think it's Friday the 2nd or Saturday the 3rd or 3rd and 4th. It's the first weekend in September where I've asked our motorcycle squad to come up and actually just saturate the roads around the Capitol complex with enforcement. Because the priority and the primary responsibility of the troopers that are stationed at the Capitol is not vehicle enforcement or road enforcement. It's tough because here we are, and it'd be great if we could get off the Capitol grounds a little bit and help out, but with some of the restrictions that we have and just not the staffing that we wish we had, it is a little sad that here we are, we have a bunch of troopers that could do something that really aren't able to do it. So reaching out to that enforcement squad and bringing them up, I want to be a good neighbor. I want you to know that we hear the pleas that are taking place and understand the issues that are taking place around there. So with that being said, I'm hoping to be able to schedule often some enforcement that will take place from the Highway Patrol that will decrease the speed, decrease the noise, decrease the racing, different things like that, and a lot of the modified vehicles that you end up in your neighborhoods. So with that, we're going to do everything we can on our part. And again, like I say, the unfortunate thing is the detachment that I have of the troopers up on the hill. We're there to take care of the safety and security of the Capitol complex and those that visit the Capitol and those that are employed within those buildings. But as much as we can otherwise, from our main responsibility and first priority is to help out the neighborhoods and to help out the roadways there and do what we can enforcement-wise. So if you have suggestions, if you like I say, I had a productive meeting with Glenn. If there are suggestions and things that you'd like to see done that you feel is something that we could accommodate and potentially could help out with, feel free to reach out to us. We're, like I say, we want to be good neighbors as well, and we do have some resources that are available in limited means. Yes, sir.
How do we reach out to you?
So Glenn has my information. I'll leave that with you as well. You're on the board, correct, Glenn?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he can get in touch with me if there's something you want to pass along through him or through anybody else. It can get to us, and
okay.
I can leave my email and cell phone number as well. But I'm on the hill many hours every single week. I'm up there quite often, and Captain Holly as well. So we take seriously the jobs that we have and the responsibilities that we have up on the hill, as well as, like I say, the roadways around and being a good neighbor for the neighborhoods here.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else?
One more.
Okay. We've got to use the microphone really well. People online can't hear.
Okay, so thank you very much. So that's the enforcement side of the 3Es. So it starts with education. And then there's engineering, which is what we're doing right now with the $600,000 commitment from the city. And followed by enforcement, a data-driven enforcement scheme, which we're working out with Salt Lake PD and UHP. And, any other questions? Yeah.
I'm relatively new, but does this traffic calming have the support of those who live in the neighborhood?
Yeah, the question is traffic calming have the support of the residents of the neighborhood? And yes, it has an overwhelming support. We've done rigorous polling and door knocking. Everyone's been every household has been contacted one way or another, and overwhelming support. That's why we're doing it.
I'm not going to rebut that, but I've never been contacted.
So maybe you could give us your address. Maybe not on this call, but if there is anybody here that didn't receive door knocker or didn't contact in any other way, please come to us, David or myself or Glenn. What part of the neighborhood do you live? In what part of the neighborhood do you live? You have to tell us.
Behind the Capitol.
Yeah, okay. Behind it. Does that mean above it?
Yes.
Okay, DeSoto neighborhood?
What's
Ensign Dallas. Okay, yeah. So you have a big group. And go with Chan. She's the board member who's managing the outreach in Ensign Dallas. Jan's right over there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Okay, now I'd like to introduce Scott Christensen, who is a member of our board, historian, and particularly involved in the history of this neighborhood. And he is going to talk about a log cabin that we have down on 3rd West.
David, are you sharing the screen?
It's on my screen. Remember to use the microphone really.
Okay, I'll try to swallow this thing so you can hear me. Good sound so far? Online?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. The William and Ann Hawk cabin is among the oldest surviving log cabins in the state of Utah. It is a one-room Pennsylvania-style log structure and was considered so important in historical terms that it was placed on the National Register in 1978, even though at that time it was nothing more than a worn-out backyard shed. I'm trying to get it to advance. Okay. There are a few older surviving log cabins in the state, including the residence of mountain man trapper Miles Goodyear. He built this cabin in 1845 at Fort Buenaventura, which is now on the west end of Ogden. And the Osmond and Mary dual log cabin built in the Mormon Fort, now Pioneer Park, in 1847. Other surviving houses in Utah from this earliest era include the 1848 Fildingar Ranch House on Antelope Island that's made of adobe, the 1848 Robert Gardner House in Mill Creek made from stone, and the 1850 Abraham and Elizabeth Kuhn House in Fair Park, which is made of plastered adobe. So, where does the Hawk cabin fit into this chronology? The answer to this question is also a lesson in the potential for inanimate objects to provide information once we know how to ask. In this case, we are talking about questioning the very logs from which the cabin was built. Dr. Matt Becker from BYU and grad student Joseph Naylor were invited by the owner of this building to do a dendrochronological study of the Hawk cabin. This is what the cabin looked like when they started doing their sampling. So what is dendrochronology? Dendro means wood and chronology means time. It is actually possible to take core samples that run from the outside of a log to its center and then compare the width of the growth rings in that core against a sample taken from a very old living tree. Wet years create wider growth rings, and drought years create thinner ones. If the tree that provided a living sample is from the same area where the logs you wish to date once grew, then you get precise information about when the tree was cut.
Becker and his associates sampled 23 Douglas fir logs and 8 white fir logs. Fortunately, there were places on all of these logs with a terminal ring, meaning that the outermost layer was still intact. The logs showed death or cut dates between 1832 and 1859. It's assumed that the 1832 sample was a tree that was felled by an avalanche that year, based on the traumatic resin ducts within the wood itself. There's a cluster from 1846. There's a strong cluster from either late fall 1851 or the spring of 1852. Full growth ring for 1851, nothing for 52. A small cluster from 1855, a single example from 1858, and a single example from 1859. Well, that's interesting. It would be more helpful, though, wouldn't it, if every log had the same death date? We love it when it's that clean, but seldom is history that easy. So then we have to combine what the logs can tell us with what we're able to learn through studying the lives of the people that were associated with this structure. William Hawk was living in Council Bluffs, Iowa, when he joined the Mormon Battalion in July 1846. And as part of that U.S. Army battalion during the Mexican-American War, he marched to San Diego, where he was mustered out. In the spring of 1848, he was hired to carry the U.S. mail from California to Missouri. In doing so, he carried the dispatches that announced the discovery of gold at Sutter's Creek, helping to initiate the California gold rush of 1849. It's William Hawk that helped people in the East to know that gold had been discovered in California. So Hawk was carrying his mail from California to Missouri. He passed through Salt Lake, but he didn't purchase any property at that time. But after delivering the mail, he gathered his family, which was also in Missouri, and immigrated with them to Salt Lake in October 1849. It's believed that they stayed in an abandoned structure at the fort, or perhaps lived in their wagon box that first winter. It was likely early in 1850 that Hawk bought from a man named Amasa Russell the city lot where the cabin now resides. Amasa Russell had immigrated to Utah in 1847, and it's likely that he built a small cabin in the fort in 1847 or early 1848. But by 1850, he had moved his small cabin onto his property. And you may or may not have figured out based on the address from the first slide, we're talking a property that's just in the next block, 3 structures away from where we are right now. Okay, so Hawk purchased Russell's small circa 1847 cabin as part of the deal to buy this land. And in 1852, Hawk took the small cabin apart and enlarged it by adding several logs that he cut at the end of 1851 or the beginning of 1852. And he made additional modifications to the structure in 1855 or 1856 to accommodate construction of a lean-to kitchen at the rear. So all of a sudden, these strange dates are starting to line up with history. So Hawk dies in 1883. His family continues to own the property. And in 1906, they built this nice, simple Victorian cottage on the property. At that same time, they hook onto the cabin with a team of horses and drag it to the back of the property, where it became a barn, and then a milk house, and eventually an auto garage. The current owner is to be praised for restoring the cabin and moving it from the back of the property to a position where it can be enjoyed by people as they walk or drive by. But one issue lingers. How was it that there were so many logs in the cabin dating from 1846? After all, the Mormons didn't come until 1847, and American Indians would not have cut trees unless they had an immediate use for them. There were occasional wagon trains in the mid-1840s transporting people to Oregon and California, but most used the Oregon-California Trail, which took them through the bottom edge of Idaho. There would have been no reason for them to enter the Salt Lake Valley far to the south. The leaders of one wagon train traveling from the Oregon Trail, I'll show you what the cabin looks like now, did come into the Great Salt Lake Valley in 1846. They had been talked into trying a newly publicized shortcut called the Hastings Cutoff, which recommended cutting through Immigration Canyon, down across the Salt Lake Valley, and west through what we now know as Tooele Valley and the Salt Flats. It was a disastrous decision for this wagon train because they were required to spend many days cutting trees in Immigration Canyon in order to create a road big enough for their wagons to cross. Those lost days caused them to be caught in the Sierra Nevada mountains during the onset of an early winter. Snowed in, they starved, and eventually many resorted to cannibalism. So, this simple log cabin located just about 50 yards south of where we are right now is very interesting because it almost certainly includes logs in its construction. There were salvaged from Immigration Canyon in 1847 by Amasa Russell when he built his simple cabin. Those logs, I'm almost certain, were cut by members of the Donner Reed Party that were trying to get to California. So, what an interesting cabin to look at, but when you realize that kind of history, it makes it even more interesting. And it does cause me to share one final bit of trivia with you. If I were to ask you who was the first Mormon or member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to enter the Great Salt Lake Valley, you might have different guesses. Some of you would say Brigham Young, or you would say a member of his company. You would be wrong if those are your guesses. The first Latter-day Saints were a family, the Murphys, headed by a widow named Lavinia. She was hoping that their family could have a fresh start and economic opportunities in the Oregon country. Unfortunately, they signed on to cross the nation with the Donner Reed Party. So what happened to the Murphys? Lavinia and her 15-year-old son Landrum starved to death and were eaten. Their son Lemuel, age 12, died, but he was not eaten. Their daughter Mary, age 14, and sons William, age 11, and Simon, age 9, actually survived. So how interesting. You think of the Donner Reed disaster as a California story, but just a short walk from our location, we have physical evidence that ill-fated wagon train passed right through here. So that's the story.
Really interesting map. Some stuff shines. Okay, are there any questions for Scott? And again, people online. Yeah, Glenn, if you wouldn't mind coming over here so you can ask your question into the microphone.
Thank you. Scott, the person who did this deserves a little credit, I think, from the neighbors around here. Do you know who that is and how we might contact him or her just to say thank you and express appreciation for what they did for our city and neighborhood? Would that be appropriate?
Jeff, do you think we can share his name? You know, I've gone by his home so that I could tell him I was going to do this presentation, because I hate to name names without permission, and I never could find him home. I don't know. But he lives in that simple Victorian house that I showed you the picture of. So if you're ever walking past there, I think it would be appropriate to strike up a conversation. He undoubtedly could share some information that I couldn't.
Is that this side of the log cabin?
Just to the next door south.
Okay.
log cabinets.
Well, we'll keep that in mind.
He's awesome, and if I ever am able to visit with him and get his permission to share his information, I'd love to do that.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Scott, that was really interesting. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we're going to spend the rest of the meeting starting a process of trying to, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Glenn?
We did have Steve Christensen on the agenda, but not on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He needs just a few minutes to talk
Certainly.
about.
Certainly. Come on up. I apologize.
No apology needed. Thanks to David and for Glenn to just give me a couple of minutes on the agenda tonight. I just want to make you all aware of a couple of service projects we're working on to help remember 9/11 Day of Service and Remembrance next month. This is the 21st anniversary, and across the country there's a national organization that's pushing this with funding under a congressional act, and some of the neighbors are putting some service projects together to help observe that Remembrance Day. So the two projects I'll tell you about are first, we're going to do a food drive that will benefit the Utah Food Bank. And we've ordered from the Utah Food Bank a number of donation barrels, as they call it. And there will be a barrel set up in this Marmalade Branch Library starting next week, and in a number of other places around the neighborhood. And people who wish to donate may simply deposit those food donations here at the library and some other places that are identified on the website. And thanks for posting those locations on the council's website. The second activity we're going to be sponsoring is on Saturday, September the 10th. We're inviting all members of the neighborhood, the Marmalade, Capitol Hill District area, to help us with a cleanup over at the local elementary school, Washington Elementary. And that'll be on Saturday, September 10th from 8 a.m. until noon. And if you go by there, you'll see the yard could use a little sprucing up. And so anyone who wishes to come over and help us out by pulling some weeds or trimming some bushes and that kinds of thing, if you have a so-called weed whacker, please bring that over. There'll be an opportunity to use that. And so if any of you are interested, we think there's a wonderful service opportunity to make a good thing out of what was originally a bad thing. So thank you.
That's very nice. Are there any questions? Well, what are some of the best kinds of food to donate?
So the Utah Food Bank likes, of course, for people to donate canned foods because it has a longer shelf life. It's best if that food is still within its so-called expiration date. And one of the things I know that they really emphasize is peanut butter. It's a good source of protein for people who may not be on a high-priced diet. Peanut butter is a very good source of protein. So those are some, and if you go to the Utah Food Bank website, they actually have a list of preferred items that they're asking to be donated.
Okay, great. Thanks again. Okay. Now we will go to this. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how you, the members of the Capitol Hill community, would like to see this council use its time and resources. So we call this, this program, This Is Your Council. Hang on a second, I gotta mess with this here. I'm trying to think this up. Okay, so we're calling this is your council. And the question we're trying to get answered here is, what would you like to happen here? Here meaning in the council. What kinds of activities would you like to see us pursuing? So the first question I'd like to ask everybody, and this goes for people online as well. I guess the best way to do it, or the best way to answer it for you, would be to type it into the chat box, is what do you especially like or appreciate about our neighborhood? Sorry, otherwise people will never hear you.
But I'm not going to answer that question. Is it okay if I make a statement about an issue? Because that sounds like what you...
Probably fits right in here.
So, sorry. My name is Vicki Collard. I've been active on the council for over 30 years. And the issue I want to talk about right now is my concern for the forward and all left turn signs along Columbus Street. From what I gathered, this decision was not made, was made without any input from those who live there or go to church there. Those who live there shouldn't have to take a convoluted route to get home. The church doesn't have off-street parking except for a few handicap spaces. We need to be able to park on both sides of the streets, which is difficult when you can't turn left. Also, it's difficult for visitors to know how to get where they're going. This decision was made to cater to those who travel through our neighborhood. It does not take into account the needs of those who live here or go to church here. We have to expect traffic in our neighborhood because we live near the Capitol and between Davis and Weber counties and downtown, the hospitals and you. Many people use Victory Road and Columbus Street because they provide a shortcut to get to these places, which is okay. But we shouldn't have to alter our lives to accommodate people coming through our neighborhood. Our focus should be on moving that traffic safely. A few years ago, before we got our light on 3rd and 5th North, at our community council meeting, we had Ralph Becker, who was our legislative representative, and somebody from the state came to our meeting, and they had a proposal for what would solve our traffic problem. We have no lights on there. And their solution was to close Columbus Street. Well, immediately hands went up, and I don't remember what anybody said, I don't remember what I said, but we were all against closing Columbus Street because that would hurt us. And I do remember what Ralph said. He said, whoa, we didn't expect this response. And that's the problem. Sometimes they make decisions and they don't talk to the people it affects. And what I would like to see happen is to be able to have a discussion, for us to have a discussion with those who made this decision and petition the state to remove these signs to help our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Okay. Would anybody care to start a discussion about the things we like about this neighborhood? There is an awful lot to like here. Yes?
Walkability.
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 Actually, Polly, why don't I give you the microphone and let you find the next person.
Accurate. Anyone? Do we all hate the neighborhood that much?
I like the historic homes, so like the Hog House that we just pointed out, and all the other ones that have so much character.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm going to just say a bit more about that. I was in fact, the last month or two, I've had the chance to go through 3 brand new, not just neighborhoods, but communities. Like, I can't recall the names right now, but the north end of Utah County, what's there, Eagle Mountain? And then at the southwest part of this valley, communities that 4 years ago were just, well, they didn't exist, but now there are tens of thousands of homes, it seems. Now, that's not bad necessarily, but ours is so different from that in that sense of historicity. Now, I'm sure they love where they live, and I'm not saying they should be living here, but this is a unique place, and I think we all get that. I just wanted to share my experience. I was almost taken aback by going through the area, just kind of blown away by how new everything was. Again, not bad, but I just loved coming back to our neighborhood and experiencing what we saw on the screen a few minutes ago. Thank you, Scott, Bob. Chris?
So one of the reasons that I love this neighborhood, living here and representing this neighborhood is not just the history of the historic homes, but the history of the whole area, the whole neighborhood and how it's changed over time, and things that haven't changed over time. So I think it's just a really cool story, part of the overall Salt Lake and history of Salt Lake and history of our state. I also like that the streets aren't straight, because it's a grid everywhere else, and it's sometimes nice to have a diagonal street every once in a while.
And the fact that the streets are only 12 feet wide in this part of town rather than like 100 feet wide. The other thing that I like is Warm Springs Park, and I think it's a spot that's got a lot of potential for our neighborhood. There's a lot of open land there. It's a park. There's the Warm Springs building. And I'm excited, to see over the next 5 to 10 years what actually happens with that.
You find the next person.
I like that during the NBA season, I can walk up City Creek and hike up there to Grandview, and then walk to the Jazz game. I also like when I ride my bike to work that there are hills, and I don't like it when I come home.
Another thing that I didn't know about when I moved here is how close we are to the trails of City Creek Canyon. So mountain biking trails and hiking trails, the whole canyon is gorgeous. So that was a huge surprise and plus.
It's actually possible to live here and take public transportation. We're very close to downtown, and we're close to a lot of other places to go.
Just kind of piggybacking on all the historic homes, all the beautiful gardens of the people in the historic homes that make themselves in the yards there, make my journey and my walking around the neighborhood so much more pleasant. I so enjoy that.
This sense of community and those that like to be involved and care about their neighbors and care about the area.
Yeah, I want to add to that, the sense of community. The neighbors are so incredibly friendly. This morning I was walking my dog, and I walked past a house that used to have 2 little dogs, and a woman was getting into her car to go to work, and I motioned to her. She rolled down her window, and I said, "Did one of your dogs die?" And she said, "Oh no, I live next door." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said the couple got divorced, and I think one of the dogs left with the husband. So I know, sad, but so I kept walking with my dog, and a block and a half later, she pulls up beside me as she's driving to work, rolls down her window, and says, I can't remember what she said to me, but like she pulled up to say more to me, and it was just like so amazing, that people in our neighborhood just really reach out and converse even though we don't know one another.
I like the variety of housing types that we have here. I mean, we have single-family homes, obviously, on small lots, on larger lots. We have multifamily homes, we have apartment complexes, we have condominiums. And unlike the philosophy that is sometimes adopted by city planners, this all works perfectly well. And in fact, I think it makes the neighborhood a richer place, a better place. Any other
say this, but since no one has yet, I'm going to make a point of it. Thanks for your comment about diversity of one type. I wanted to address a diversity of a different type. You know, I say social diversity. Sometimes we like people that are like us, and we tend not to be accepting of others who are different from us. But let me say that in this neighborhood, we have an opportunity to embrace all kinds of people. We can love everyone and appreciate everyone for the differences that are right here. Black and white, Mormon, non-Mormon, it goes on and on. So all of that, the diversity makes a big difference. And I just love that about it, and I love meeting all kinds of different people and getting to know them and loving them regardless of who they are. So that's what I love about Capitol Hill.
Okay, any other comments anybody wants to make? All right, we'll go on to the next question, which is not as fun. Are there any problems here that you would like to see addressed? And what are they? I'm not looking for solutions here, we're just looking to identify what the issues might be. I'll lead off with the most obvious one. We have some traffic issues here that everybody is well aware of. So we get that out of the way and talk about some other stuff. Anybody? It's perfectly fine to say we have issues here because that's one of the reasons we're here. Come on up, Jan.
I think we have a fire issue. You know, I think we're probably one of the few neighborhoods in the city that's surrounded by natural areas, really on four sides. So I think we really need to have a plan for what we do in case of a fire coming from any different direction. Or we might not be living in this neighborhood anymore. You want to?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I'm alone on this. I think we're not, the state and county and city are not doing enough to protect the air quality. We have a massive mining, gravel mining pit adjacent to us to the north. Sometimes that actually drifts into the neighborhood. And it's not just our neighborhood, Rose Park as well. And refineries, they pick. It was ironic, you know, 2.5 weeks ago, right after a big rain, that was the time that they had to equalize the air. We can't enjoy good air quality that usually follows a rain. No, that's when they fired up. They did a massive burn off, and it was with 1.5 second intervals for what, an hour and a half, 2 hours?
At least.
Is that supposed to be standard? Is that supposed to be acceptable? Do we need refineries here? DEQ, they don't have sophisticated instruments. They have 4 guys that are qualified to know what they see and react to what they see. And what I'm speaking of is when there's a cloud of dust, then they find that telephone number and call the vendors, the gravel pit managers, and say you got to get off the garden hose and do something about the dust. It should be acceptable, and I don't know how it's not going the right direction, and I think we need to do more about air quality. And of course, when there's air quality problem, there's a water quality problem because of the runoff.
Thanks. What else?
At least on my street, lots of people, visitors who come and don't respect that it's a residential neighborhood and like to litter and like to make lots of noise and like to stay out and party, have sex, do drugs down the street until 2 a.m.
Once again, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said. Yeah, for me, so as I talked about the wonderful things about walking my dog in the neighborhood, one of the doggy downers of walking my dog in the neighborhood is that there are a lot of people who are mentally ill and addicted to drugs who tend to spend a lot of time in our neighborhood, and it's not the people that bother me, it's the junk they leave behind. The shopping cart's full of garbage, and I'm just going to put this out here, the human feces that my dog loves to snack on. And it's just, I know, it's awful, but sorry, but it exists, and it's real, and it's a real problem in our neighborhood now. So, yeah, I feel like, you know, what used to be a clean neighborhood is not so clean anymore. Sorry, I know. At least I didn't say it during dinner.
How many do I get?
As many as you like.
So I think that we have a problem with short-term rentals. So I think that short-term rentals of a room or an adjacent, you know, in a duplex or multiplex is okay, but of an entire home where the owner doesn't live there is a problem, because I know some streets where there are no residents, you know, so it's basically like living in the hallway of a hotel. And that's not good for safety, it's not good for community, and people don't want to enjoy that. I also think we have a lighting problem. It's during the night. There are a couple streets that have really nice lamps, but most of the neighborhood is atrocious lighting. It feels like it's daytime out there. If I go walking late at night, I feel like I'm in a prison yard. And with the hills, you know, some people have these lamps that just shine right in their windows, and maybe it's okay during the summer, but come winter, it just like shines in there. It's so bad. All right, thank you.
Well, I'd like the neighborhood to be a little more family friendly, have maybe a recreation center, swimming pool, something, maybe even a restaurant as part of that, or a bar, so that we have a place where we can all sort of gather and, you know, and the kids are welcome.
So I don't know if this is something that the council can address, but I think as a neighborhood, we have a problem with enforcement of existing laws. I think, as my neighbor Amy mentioned, we've got a problem with visitors that come up and just don't respect the neighborhood. And then when you do actually get a police officer to come up, there's no consequence for bad behavior, and so behavior continues.
What else? I'll contribute. Oh, Scott, come on up. Thanks.
We want to hear what you have to complain about too, David.
About what?
What you have to complain about.
Yeah, sorry I took your opportunity. I'm disappointed that some of the surfaces of our streets are pretty rough, and there need to be more repairs made, but I'd love to see more streets undergo a complete repaving. And there are also streets in our neighborhood, like especially shorter streets like Alita Place and Arctic Court, where it doesn't seem like the city has ever, they grudgingly take ownership, they acknowledge ownership, but they don't ever do curb and gutter, they don't do paving, and that means that they certainly don't do snow removal in the winter. And then there's the weird case on Pugsley between 600 North and 700 North, which desperately needed all of that treatment, and the city just kind of advocated and said, well, we don't think we own it anymore, so the local residents can take care of that if that's a priority for them. Well, that's like millions of dollars. That's not reasonable. And it's confusing to me because it seems like a couple years ago, we, in good faith, passed a bonding measure for like $60 million to do additional work on our city streets, and I have yet to see any of that money or that love come to our neighborhood.
I'm not defending. Just one thing, I'd be happy to talk through any of these issues with you. Just one thing I would add that is a concern that I have for our neighborhood is about, it's a citywide problem and a valley-wide problem is gentrification. A lot of people being forced out, and that is part of the reason why we are seeing declining enrollment in schools. A lot of new families can't afford to live in Salt Lake City or in my area of the city in particular. And so that worries me as well, housing affordability and gentrification.
What I was going to mention is, in evidence right here tonight and every other community council meeting, I wish there was more involvement in the community itself. I'm not blaming anybody, but if in the course of this exercise that we're doing, people have suggestions about how to improve the relevance of the neighborhood council, how to make it more germane to your life, to your concerns, to your desires for the neighborhood, I think the board would be extremely interested in hearing those suggestions. Is there anything else? Okay then. Now we come to the essay question. Not really an essay question. I have forms that replicate what you see on the screen here for you to fill out. The idea here is for us to get an idea of how you prioritize some of these issues, and there's also a space on the right to add things that aren't on the list. But basically what we'd like you to do is rate each of these things from 0, meaning it's fine, don't care, whatever, not really a big deal, to 3, meaning it's a real concern, real priority of yours, okay? So I have some pens and pencils here for those of you who don't have them. If you could start passing those around, please. And when you're finished, this is the end of the meeting, so when you're finished, you can just bring them up and hand them to me or put them on the podium here. And they are anonymous, and if anybody's still in attendance online, as soon as I end this meeting, this form is going to appear as in the form of a survey in your browser. So please don't leave this minute. I'm going to end the meeting on Zoom, and at that point, you'll be able to see and complete the survey.
Should we have like first priority number 1 and then third priority number 3?
That'd be nice, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. So for now, we'll just have to, go with high-low priority. No, what you wanted and what I wanted is a ranked choice thing. I couldn't figure out how to make it work on Zoom, and I didn't think it would be helpful to have 2 different formats for this thing. Okay, so now I'm going to end the Zoom meeting. I see there still are a couple of people anyway online. So if you just hang around 1 second more, you will see this survey come up in your browsers.